the American dream. To his last breath, he'll always be a soldier.
Heard on great radio stations all across America. It's the National Defense with Randy Miller and Jerry Newberry.
The National Defense is made possible by Ford, Go Further, by the Home Depot, more saving, more doing, by ADT Security, more than just a line in the sand, by VSP. For more information on how VSP can help you with your corrective vision needs, visit their website at VSP.com. By Morgan Stanley. Discover how they can help you reach your long-term financial goals at morganstanley.com. By the Wounded Warrior Project, serving those who sacrificed for over 15 years. Find them online at woundedwarriorproject.org. And by Farmers Insurance. At Farmers, we know a thing or two because we've seen a thing or two. Find an agent at farmers.com.
This is the National Defense, Randy Miller and Jerry Newberry. And Jerry, as always, our dedication.
Hey, this show's for you, the men and women serving in our military. It's for the millions of veterans out there, and it's for all their families. We're here for you. We love you. God bless you.
We love Farmers. Dun, 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 dun. And we're so happy that Farmers is a great partner with the National Defense. We're going to try to get some veterans hired today. How about that? We've got the head of talent with us. Ginger Fields is on the phone. Ginger, how are you?
I'm great. Thank you so much.
I want to be the head of talent. What a great title. I mean, that is.
I don't know about that.
That is one of the best titles, seriously. What do you do for a living? I'm the head of talent. I mean, that's...
A lot of people don't know what that means when I say that, so I have to clarify exactly what that covers.
Well, that's probably true, huh? How long have you been with Farmers?
I have been with Farmers for almost 19 years now.
Oh, wow. Wow.
Yep. I started after, had a couple of jobs, couple of companies straight out of college, and then found my way to Farmers. It just felt right. Had lots of opportunity. I kind of reflect back, and I think I've stayed over the years, mainly because of the great people here and really the really meaningful work that we do. So it's been a great run.
Yeah, I was just going to say, everybody we've talked to at Farmers not only does a great job, but they all seem to enjoy their jobs. And that's just got to be the culture that you guys have there, right?
That's a really good point. I mean, we encourage people to stay if they want to stay. And it's oftentimes a very great fit, which is why we've got such good tenure in a lot of cases. But if it's not the right fit, we absolutely are supportive, and we want to make sure people are, have fulfilling careers. So we try to be very supportive, whatever works.
Well, thank you for being with us today, because we want to get some of these veterans hired. And that's what you do. As a head of talent, you look for people that are going to come in, be loyal, make great employees, that kind of a thing, right?
Yep, absolutely. We're looking for a good job fit. Obviously, we're always looking for different skill sets, looking for diverse talent, certainly looking for folks to come in and help us fill key gaps where maybe we've, in a particular team, maybe we've got certain strengths and we're looking for, other strengths coming into that team to really bring out the best for Farmers. So absolutely.
We're talking to Ginger Fields, the head of talent for Farmers. And, well, let's talk about some of those jobs then, Ginger, because Farmers Insurance, I can't even imagine how many departments you have there and what kind of positions you need to fill. But kind of walk us through that a little bit, if you will.
Yeah, absolutely. I certainly won't be able to go into all of them. Just to give a high-level overview, we're a company of a little over 20,000, I think around 21,000 right now. And we span across the U.S., and our home office is in the L.A. and the Woodland Hills area, but we've got many hubs across the country and many what we would call satellite offices. So we have jobs that range anywhere from claims opportunities, so claims adjusters, helping our customers when they've experienced a loss, to a lot of technology and IT positions, other service roles, certainly helping our agents out as they're trying to service the policies as well with their customers, product jobs, marketing, really any support function that you can imagine in any company, HR, all of those. We've got an array of positions at Farmers.
So when you conduct an interview, what is one of the first things you look for in a potential hire?
Yeah, so I would say, really how the candidate will complement the team. So I think I mentioned that just a minute ago, but really what I mean by that is, what do they bring that's different?
Sure.
For that particular position? Is there a gap in that team? A really good example, and we see this as just kind of a simple example, but Do we have a group of team members who are amazing at execution, quick to decisions, getting things done? Certainly that's important. But in that case, when there's an opening, we may be looking for someone who can help bring a more disciplined or analytical approach to problem solving to help kind of balance that team out. So oftentimes it depends on what's going on the team. So those are good questions to ask when you're going into an interview, is to really understand what they're looking for in this particular position.
Yeah, and, after 19 years of doing this, I would imagine that pretty early on in the conversation whether this is going to be somebody good for farmers or not.
Absolutely, and we really, and I would say that that's evolved over the years too. So
Yeah.
we've really, we've pulled back and we've really taken a closer look at really having that balance and having those diverse perspectives, and so really trying to evolve that out and understanding what our customer base looks like, and so therefore what the needs and really understanding the needs of those customers, and making sure that we have an employee population that's going to be reflective of that customer base to really be able to fulfill on those needs as well too. So, yep, absolutely.
Yeah, and some of the things that you said that you're looking for in terms of an employee, it just sounded to me like you were talking about somebody with a military background because they have all of those kind of assets. What are some important things, if somebody does have a military background, some of the things important for them to know going in?
We've hired a lot of military personnel that have done very well here. And so I would say really start with identifying, what positions and really career options that align with your passion. So what you really love doing, and then also your skills. So what are you good at? And then, that sounds easy enough. That's, some common advice that's out there, but that's not always the easiest thing to do is to really figure out how to translate that. So I just really encourage people to do their homework, really conduct research. There's so many resources online. There's very specific military resources to help with that. Building your network and really leveraging it is key, I think. And so, asking a lot of questions. Don't be afraid, even in social settings, to be asking, what are options, and again, trying to line that up with what that you would really love doing. And then just be prepared to really translate your experience in the military to how it's relevant for the position that you're after. So I think that piece is important. And one thing we've done here at Farmers, and again, that's kind of after you're hired, but if you can find this pre-hire, is kind of some mentorship, right? We try to line up, some of our new military hires with folks that we've had here for some time that have been successful, or they've found different roles at Farmers, and had them really form a mentoring relationship to help that new hire in that onboarding and understanding what's going to help them have a successful career path here at Farmers as well.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that in terms of, veterans love working with other veterans. And do you try to line them up with somebody maybe with a military background to share that information and that experience with them?
We definitely do. We have an employee resource group. It's called our Veterans and Advocates Employee Resource Group. So they do a lot of the sponsorship around that and really identifying our new hires that are military, and then try to help with that mentorship piece. So we absolutely do that.
All right. So just as a little exercise for people to understand what not to do, now you have to, Ginger, 19 years, you have to have had some classic situations where people came in and just did something dumb during the interview.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Give me a couple of those.
Yeah, I would say probably the biggest thing is just coming in and assuming, particularly with a military background, assuming who you're speaking to understands the lingo. And I know that's so common, but and I think a lot of it's second nature. So using acronyms that maybe we don't, that others may not understand if they haven't been in the military, maybe they don't have military family members or whatever. That's not going to translate. And then it's not even just the acronyms, but just kind of the being able to translate anything from maybe something that you're relating to a mission, or something where you are having to execute, and how that equated to your leadership skills or how you executed on a project. So again, definitely had situations where candidates have come in and had a hard time really translating that,
right?
And then just made some assumptions that who they were talking to, had that background and understood all of the lingo. So I would say that's probably the biggest example I've seen.
Yeah, I used to do the media training for the veterans of foreign wars, their leadership, and that was one of the things that we just preached all the time, was that how you guys talk to each other is not how everybody wants to hear you. They don't understand what you're talking about with the acronyms and the vernacular and the fob and the outpost and all this kind of stuff. And it's tough to get them out of that because they've done it for so long.
Absolutely.
What about somebody that's? Have you ever had anybody come in and just go, "When do I start?"
Yeah. Certainly. I mean, definitely have had folks come in, certainly, confident about, their ability to fill the role and all of that good stuff. So Absolutely have had that as well. Yes.
Oh, I'll bet you could write a book, Ginger.
I've had lots of fun.
Hey, we're talking to Ginger Fields from Farmers. She's the head of talent and regarding some employment situations. What are the important questions to ask during your interview? So, you've talked about some of those, and a good idea to ask your, where do you see this position going in the next few years? That's always kind of been a tough one, I think, for a lot of people to get into maybe even an entry-level situation and be confident enough to say, hey, is this going to go, in 5 years, is this going to be something that I can really advance to?
That's a totally fine question to ask. I absolutely encourage people to ask those questions in an interview if that's, if the advancement and the potential, which oftentimes and most times is important to people, ask those questions. So I would say the best advice I give around that is just really ask questions that are genuine and that are going to help you determine if the position and the employer are really a good fit for you. So most questions are not off limits. So whether it's career path, if schedule flexibility is important to you for whatever reason, for family situation or whatever it might be, ask those questions. Make sure that it's a good fit for you too. The employer, in most cases, if they know what they're doing, they want you to ask the questions that are going to be important and authentic for you, so that you can self-select and self-deselect if it's not going to be a good fit for you. So I'd say the biggest one is just ask questions that are really authentic and that are going to help you make the right decision for yourself.
Well, and much better to ask those in the beginning, right? I mean, once you're hired and you say, oh, you know what, Thursdays are not good for me.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. I totally agree. So, get it out up front. And most companies, I mean, in the market we're in today, I mean, it's a tough market for companies, certainly, and it's definitely a candidates market, and that we know the candidates interviewing us just as much as we're interviewing them. And so we absolutely expect those types of questions. And it's good to get those questions because we know what's on the candidate's mind. We watch for trends and what.
Ginger, you're great. I can see why you've been there for 19 years. You're really, really good. Thank you so much for the time. And hey, let's get some of these veterans hired, huh?
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
We'll be right back with the National Defense right after this word from Farmers Insurance. When you're dealing with life's ups and downs, it helps to know the ins and outs of insurance. Farmers Insurance has been sharing practical insurance knowledge for more than 89 years. At Farmers, we know a thing or two because we've seen a thing or two. Find an agent at farmers.com.
We are farmers. Bum, 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 bum.
Welcome back to the National Defense. It's Randy Miller, and it's time for another Morgan Stanley Money Brief. The money man this week is Peter Perez. He's the Senior Vice President and Wealth Advisor with Morgan Stanley. Peter, how are you?
I'm doing fantastic. How about you?
I'm doing great, and this is so exciting about these FICO scores because I don't know anything about this. We talked about credit and the FICO credit score last week. Can we continue that discussion?
Sure. So, as I said last week, your willingness to lend me money depends on a couple of things. Mostly, what is my willingness and ability to pay you back?
Right.
So the FICO score uses past behavior with credit to assess behavior on a scale in the future of, say, 300 to 850, with 850 being the best.
Right.
The score is intended to predict how I'm likely to behave with credit in the future.
Yeah, I mean, that makes sense. So how is your FICO score calculated?
That's a good question. So few people really understand it. Remember, the score is based on past behavior, but it tries to predict how you will act in the future.
Yeah, I get it, but what are the components of my FICO score?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, but first, let's touch upon the three separate credit rating companies.
Yeah.
Equifax, Experian, and TransUnion. Each will have its own credit score on you, again, between 300 and 850. And generally, lenders tend to average all three into one composite score, again, ranging from 300 to 850.
I didn't know that. Can we get back to what makes up the FICO score?
Roger? Randy. Roger, as in yes. There are 5 components to your FICO score, right?
Right.
Payment history is most important. In other words, do you pay your bills on time?
Right.
That's 35%. The amount of money you owe or how much you've borrowed, that's 30% of your score. The length of credit history, in other words, like how long have you had credit open?
Right.
That's 15% of your score. New credit, think inquiries for new credit. It's about 10% of your score. And the types of credit, is it secured by your house or your car versus a credit card, which is unsecured? That's 10% of your score.
I mean, that is interesting, Pete. I've always wondered why my credit isn't a perfect 850, because I do pay my bills on time and don't owe a lot of money.
You know, you hit upon often the most overlooked aspect of your FICO score. And that's the remaining 35% of your score. The longer you have a credit card or a credit line or open loan, the older it is, right?
Right.
And the older it is, the more points you get.
I did not know that.
Yep.
Huh.
And of similar weighting and importance is the new credit component. This is where people generally are unaware of the impact credit inquiries can have.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, so let's say you're on the internet, right?
Right. And
a mortgage ad pops up, and you fill out the online information to find out, how much you can borrow for a house or refinance, and on what interest rate you can borrow, right?
Right.
Depending on the site, if the info goes all the way through and you get back a rate, guess what?
Yep.
You just had a credit inquiry hit your FICO score.
Wow.
So do that a few times while shopping for an interest rate, and your credit rating can take a bit of a hit.
That's crazy. I didn't know that.
Big time. So generally speaking, you're best served avoiding online credit solicitations because you can never be sure.
That is so helpful. And now that we know how your credit score is calculated, we can avoid things that hurt the scores going forward. Hey, next week, can we talk about the impact of credit scores on what it costs to borrow?
Absolutely. I'll look forward to it.
Pete, thank you so much. We'll be back here next week with a new edition of the Morgan Stanley Money Brief right here on the National Defense.
Hello. My name is Marty DeBerge. I'm a filmmaker. I make a lot of commercials. That little dog that chases the covered wagon underneath the sink, that was mine. In 1966, I went down to Greenwich Village, New York City, to a rock club called the Electric Banana. Don't look for it, it's not there anymore. But that night, I heard a band that, for me, redefined the word rock and roll. I remember being knocked out by their exuberance, their raw power, and their punctuality. That band was Britain's now legendary Spinal Tap. 17 years and 15 albums later, Spinal Tap is still going strong, and they've earned a distinguished place in rock history as one of England's loudest bands.
Welcome back to the National Defense. It's Randy Miller, and I am so happy to have director, producer, actor Rob Reiner on the program. Rob, how are you?
Randy, thanks for having me.
Did I get all the titles? I mean, you do it all.
Yeah, you got it. You also have husband and father. You can throw that one in.
That's right. Well, before we get into this, I just want to thank you I was a morning DJ for 30 years. I want to thank you from all the radio guys that I know and all the musicians. Thank you for Spinal Tap.
Oh, yeah. Well, there's a fine line between stupid and clever.
We have all the levels turned up to 11. We're ready to go.
Okay.
And you have, man, what a career. You've done so much, and now you're out with your new movie called Shock and Awe, which is opening this weekend. I just watched that this morning. What a movie! Not only a great movie, great cast. I mean, you got Tommy Lee Jones in there. You got Woody Harrelson. You got Jessica Biel. I mean, so much good stuff. But what a great spotlight to shine on such an important situation as going into Iraq.
Yeah, well, I mean, the thing is, these guys, these 4 journalists, this is a true story about these 4 journalists from Knight Ridder News who basically got it all right. I mean, everybody was kind of, the mainstream media was kind of just, going with the administration's propaganda on it, but these guys figured it all out. And it's a movie about how important it is to have a free and independent press to search for the truth, because otherwise we don't have a democracy unless the public is informed and know how to hold our leaders accountable. So this is a story about these guys who actually got it right in the run-up to the war in Iraq.
Yeah, I enjoyed your performance in this movie as well.
Thank you very much. I wasn't supposed to be in the movie.
Really?
Initially, it was Alec Baldwin was cast. Huh. And we actually rearranged a schedule for him so he could go and do Saturday Night Live, to do Trump. But 2 days before he was supposed to shoot, he said, he can't do it. His agent called, said he can't do it. So I didn't know. My wife, Michelle, said, she's one of the producers. She said, well, why don't you play the part? And I said, I don't know. I don't know if I act and direct. I don't like that. I said, but I'm available. So I figured, I'll work cheap. So I did it.
You did a great job. And, when I started watching this movie, it really struck me, Rob, as so it's kind of Watergate-y, but as we get through the movie, it really hits me like this is that kind of a story from my generation.
Yeah.
I mean, when I look back at All the President's Men and the Watergate story, that's some great history, and that's stuff that I, kind of lived through as a kid. But this is us.
Yeah, this is us, and for me, as somebody who was of draft age during the Vietnam War, I just couldn't believe, because as we were marching towards war, and I understood everybody was kind of, traumatized by 9/11, and we were swept up in patriotism, wanting to do, whatever we thought we needed to do, and certainly going along with what the administration said. But I got a sense that this was not true. I mean, it didn't seem like we were, Saddam Hussein had nothing to do with 9/11, and I didn't see that there was definite evidence of weapons of mass destruction. And I thought, how can we be doing this, and why are we doing this? And nobody ever called anybody on it. It seemed to happen, and I always wanted to make a movie about how did this happen? How did we get into this situation? So I found these 4 journalists, which I didn't even know.
No, I'd never heard of these guys
writing about this stuff.
Right.
And that was the thing. They never broke through. They couldn't get any traction.
Yeah. And, the other thing that as I'm watching the movie, I'm thinking, what a time in history for this to happen, after 9/11, because like you mentioned, and the movie does a great job of pointing out this patriotism and this uniting. So now you get all of these men and women who immediately join the military. They're ready. They're ready to go, right? And
that's exactly right.
And so we've never had a more loaded gun than what we had then, and it's. I mean,
it's scary, and here's the thing, because I saw this other documentary about this young guy who that very thing happened to. His family had all served, and he wanted to join. As soon as 9/11, he joined up. And he was sent to Afghanistan, and. The next thing he knows, they hadn't completed the mission there. They hadn't caught bin Laden, and they hadn't destroyed the Al-Qaeda there. Right. And the next thing he knows, he's getting shipped to Iraq, and he didn't understand why, because it seemed like, that wasn't the mission, and the next thing he's in Iraq for less than a week, and his transport hits an IED, and he loses the use of his legs.
Oh, that was the opening.
So that's what I wanted to show in the movie, that, it's the character that Tommy Lee Jones plays. He plays this guy, Joe Galloway, who, is a great war correspondent. He got a Bronze Star during Vietnam. And he says, when the government, I'll clean it up, but he says, when the government messes up, the soldiers pay the price.
Yep.
And so I wanted to make a movie that said, we really have to know what is true and what's not true before we send our kids into harm's way.
Yeah, and what a great message this movie delivers. And it's the reason that we started this radio show 13 years ago, because I don't care how you feel about the government, the military, whatever, you have to support the men and women who put on the uniform. And
of course you do. And I think the best way you can support them is not putting them in combat situations where we don't need to be.
Yeah.
Only when when our national security is threatened, then we have to be ready to defend. But you don't just send people, and in this case, it was something that was predetermined even before 9/11. The idea of trying to spread democracy around the world,
right.
Which is a great goal, but you don't do that at the point of a gun.
Well, and the other thing, we're talking to Rob Reiner here in the National Defense. The other thing, Rob, is that you have a choice. I have a choice. The journalists all have a choice to believe or not to believe. The men and women in the military have no choice. You go where they say go.
Right.
I mean,
and that's why it's so important that we hold our leaders accountable so that they're not sending, young men and women to places that they don't need to go. I mean, there's a line in the movie where the character that I play, is speaking to his reporters, and he said, when he says, when the government says something, there's only one question you have to ask: is it true? Yeah. That's the job of a journalist, to find the truth and to understand what's going on, so that we can have an informed public and hold leaders accountable. Because, as he said, it's the soldiers that pay the price.
Well, and unfortunately, with these journalists in the movie, Shock and Awe, when they asked and they found the truth, nobody listened. Nobody
listened because the Bush administration had determined they were going to go to Iraq, like I say, even before 9/11. That was determined that they wanted to do that. And so they were selling, listen, every administration, Republican or Democrat, they all use propaganda to sell policy or a rationale to go to war. So they were selling that propaganda. They were trying to get people on board with this. And to me, it's like, it's one thing to, use propaganda to try to sell your wares or whatever. But when people's lives are at stake and their lives are on the line, you better be accurate and not just say we're making this up and because we want to, magically put a Western-style democracy in the Middle East. You just, it's not fair. It's not fair to young men and women who put their lives on the line.
So in the movie, Woody Harrelson is tremendous. Can that guy do anything? I mean,
he really can.
Wow.
He's such a great actor. I mean, I've said before, if I could make every movie with him, I would. I mean, he was great in LBJ, and he can transform himself. He can play comedy, drama, anything. I mean, and plus he's a great guy.
Well, talk about some good actors and actresses that you've worked with. We had Demi Moore on this program a few weeks ago and talked to her about A Few Good Men, and here's what she had to say.
Rob was very masterful at handling the kind of the depth and the substance of the material, but bringing that humor and humanity.
Yeah, I mean...
That's nice of her to say.
Is it true?
Yeah, I guess so. I think it is. I try to set a good tone, for people. It's like having a playground where everybody can feel safe and have fun and be able to create, and that's what I try to do. And I got to say, having Jack Nicholson there helps, because this guy's an incredible professional, and he's so committed to his work that it sends a message to all the young actors. In this case, it was Tom and Demi and Kevin Bacon, and it said we gotta be serious about doing our work here.
Yeah, because Jack's watching.
He's right there watching, and he's everybody looks up to him.
Well, everybody looks up to you. I mean, you look at your track record and look at the acclaimed movies that you've directed and starred in. When Harry Met Sally, golly, I mean, just the whole gamut. And you've done just about everything. And talk about something that's incredibly solid is Shock and Awe, and just have you ever done a movie like that?
Not like this. I mean, I've done movies that have historical backgrounds. I did a thing called Ghost of Mississippi, which was about the assassination of Medgar Evers, and so I've done things that are based in historical fact, but nothing like this. No.
Yeah, and have you screened this at all, Rob, for any of the military?
We have. I got to say, we had a screening the other night for USO, and that was really great. I mean, they appreciate it. But I got to tell you, I had a screening in D.C. A while ago, and General Shinseki was there, and Colonel Wilkerson, who was Colin Powell's chief of staff, he was there too. And Shinseki, as you remember, he testified in front of Congress before, going into Iraq, and he said, if you're going to be serious about, invading this country and trying to hold it, and not let it fall apart, you're going to need 300,000 to 400,000 troops. And he was fired, basically.
Yeah, right.
He was right. I mean, but he got fired. And so he says to me afterwards, he's watching this thing, and he said, you don't often see a general cry, but he was crying when he was seeing this thing. And Wilkerson says to me, it got me angry all over again. He was very upset, that Colin Powell was swept up in the, in the propaganda that the Bush administration was putting forward. I mean, I don't know about you, but when he went in front of the UN, I thought, this guy's got more credibility than anybody.
Yeah.
So if he's saying it, maybe it's true.
Oh yeah, I think we all did. I think everybody went, well, hey, listen, this is happening, and it's got to have some basis in fact.
Yeah,
and
I know, but it's sad because I felt like he got hung out to dry in a way, and and it's really bad, because like you say, the soldiers are paying the price. We can't be sending them to war based on faulty information or lies,
Yeah. We're talking to Rob Reiner here on the National Defense, and also we're working with the VA to get this movie played at a lot of the military bases, because I think it is. It's an important movie. It's something that I think everybody in the military and the veterans should absolutely see. And I think we all support our troops, and we want to protect and support our troops. To me, there's no more better way to support your troops than to not send them to where they don't need to go. Hey, Rob, let me ask you. I want to get your advice on something, and since you brought that up, supporting the troops, we've had some great celebrities on his program. I mean, George Lucas was on. We've had a bunch of celebrities. And on the other hand, all we ask is that they come on, say hi to the troops, give a message, give a little shout out. But there are pockets of celebrities that can't find 5 minutes in their day or their week to call into the show. And my inclination is to name them. But, what do you do with that?
It's ridiculous. How can you not? How can you not?
Hey, Rob, thank you so much for your time, man. I really appreciate it. And now that you have our number, pass it along to any of your friends that you want to see if they might give us a call and support the troops.
Okay, Randy, it sounds good. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much. Shock and awe opening this weekend. Rob Reiner right here on the National Defense. Welcome back to the National Defense. It's Randy Miller, and it's time for Eye Insights from VSP Vision Care. Dr. Tim Jankowski joins us here in the program again. Doctor, how are you doing?
I'm doing terrific.
So we're in the summer. We got all these things going on. Let's talk about some of these common eye problems in the summer. Dry eye is one of those things. Why is that so prevalent in the summertime?
Well, dry eyes are very common in the summer due to the higher temperatures and the associated use of air conditioning, which removes humidity from the environment. The lower the humidity in the environment, that makes the dry eye a lot worse.
And what about styes? You hear about styes a lot, and it's one of those things that you see in the summer as well.
Well, you're absolutely right. The styes are more common during the summer. They are usually involved in conjunction with exposure to water and outdoors, and especially if the person who has the stye may not be feeling terrifically well. If the immune system is affected at all, it makes them a much likelier candidate to develop styes. And to treat styes, it's important to use hot compresses on the eyelids themselves, and oftentimes we need to use antibiotics as well.
Huh. And so how long does a sty last? I don't think I've ever had a sty.
Well, you're lucky.
Yeah, I mean,
you're very lucky.
That's a pretty common thing, right?
Well, it is fairly common, and the styes can be very short acting. They could be there just for a day or two, or they could be there weeks or even sometimes months. But the faster that you begin to treat them with the hot compresses, the faster they go away. So if ideally you recognize a sty in the first day or two, you see it and you start treating with hot compresses, they'll probably go away within 3 or 4 days. But the later you wait, the longer it takes for it to go away, and sometimes they don't always go away.
Oh, wow. So what's another eye-related issue that can occur, in the summertime?
Well, bacterial infection, more commonly called pink eye, is very common during the summer. It's very highly contagious, and we recommend that you see your eye doctor immediately so you can prescribe antibiotics. That's the only treatment for it.
So pink eye is contagious. Are styes contagious?
Not directly.
Okay.
The only way they're contagious in the sense is that if you're exposed to the same thing that created the sty in the first place.
Oh,
so
I got
you can't usually give styes to each other. That's the good news.
Yeah, but pink eye, I can remember, especially kids. When you're growing up, somebody has pink eye. They're like quarantined, right?
Exactly, or everybody gets pink eye.
Yeah,
exactly. One or the
other. Are eye allergies something that is still relevant in the summertime? Do people get eye allergies in the summertime?
Well, yeah, absolutely they do. Anytime things are blooming, particularly within usually a week or two after rains, things begin to bloom again. And if there's any pollen in the air, absolutely it can happen any time of the year, but it's especially true in the summer, especially certain parts of the country.
Is there any kind of prevention for any of these issues?
Well, there is some, and the most important thing is to practice what we call good lid hygiene, which means washing your face and your eyes regularly, being careful not to get too close to the eyes, because that can act as an irritant. But the more that you pay attention to the eyes, the less likely you are going to run into problems with eye infections and allergies and so forth.
Yeah, I would imagine, especially after being in a pool or being in a lake or whatever, you really need to make sure that your face and eyes are clean, right?
Exactly. And also to protect your eyes, too, wearing sunglasses. If you can protect your eyes from wind, dust, dryness, and ultraviolet light, that prevents a lot of problems, too.
Yeah, I read something the other day about even dogs. A lot of people you have dogs in their car and they let them stick their heads out, and they get irritants in their eyes just like we do.
Oh, exactly, and they have a lot of dry eye problems. They affect there are specific goggles for them called doggles.
I've seen those. Yeah, and those work, right?
They work.
That's
they work
great.
well.
Hey, there's something else that works well. What you guys are doing for our listeners, this is an exciting announcement. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Absolutely. VSP is currently a vision carrier for hundreds of thousands of federal employees through the Federal Dental and Vision Insurance Program. And coming soon, in January of 2019, certain retired members of the uniformed services and their families, as well as most family members of active duty servicemen and women, will be offered vision care. It might be a little bit early, but if you want to get more information about it, please go ahead and visit tricare.benefeds.com.
Great stuff. Boy, that's going to be great for a lot of people. Dr. Jankowski, thank you. We'll be back here next week with a brand new episode of Eye Insights from VSP Vision Care right here on the National Defense.